telecom and the telecom beat for more than a decade, since 2003. She's served as a senior writer for CNET News, covering all things wireless and broadband, and from the launch of the latest must-have iconic devices, major telephone mergers, spectrum policy issues. She's a rare breed of reporter that spends a lot of time and understands the telecom issues in a unique way. She frequently appears as an expert on major news network shows. Her Ask Maggie column offers readers advice and insight twice a week on wireless data plans, smartphone purchases, iPhone speculation, whatever that is. iPhone watcher, I guess, right? Anything wireless related. So it's great to have Maggie back with us again. And we're getting set up here. I'll introduce Maggie, and then I'll just let you introduce your guests as we follow the process here. Okay? Just a second.
Thank you.
Hey, Maggie, good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
You sit there. We'll mix up boy, girl.
Thank you.
Everybody okay here? I'm just going to grab a water.
Do we want water? I think that's it. Not me, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us. I think I'm, okay, there we go. I think I'm on now. This is going to be a really fun panel. We have a lot to talk about. So I'm just going to let each of the guests introduce themselves and just tell us very briefly a little bit about your company so we just have some context and know who you are. So you want to start on this end?
Yeah, I'm Terry Addington. I'm the chairman and CEO of a company called SI Wireless. We do business as MobileNation. I think what's kind of unique about us is we're a new entrant. Let me just give you a brief explanation. Some of you remember me in my role at First Cellular of Southern Illinois. We were around this organization for 16 years. Started in 1990, sold in 2006. It was owned by 6 independent ILECs. They sold in 2006, made a bunch of money. In 2009, they called me back and they said, we should not have sold. We screwed up. Is there any way you can get us back into the wireless business? And so I started poking around trying to find ways to get us back in the wireless business, and then finally struck a deal with Sprint and their SRA program, their strategic program, and we went live in 2012, customer acquisition live, and here we are today. So we're a rare breed these days where we're a new entrance into the cellular marketplace.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. I'm Linda Martin. I am founder and president of a company called PC Management, and we have invested and built about 16 wireless carrier companies in rural markets around the U.S., including one that we continue to manage today, Keystone Wireless, which covers 10 counties in central Pennsylvania, from about Reading to State College, where Penn State's located. And we're serial entrepreneurs and continually reinventing ourselves, which is probably our differentiator. And most recently announced a merger with a UK-based company to, again, reinvent the local market with new partners and a new international focus.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm John Foxman. I'm the president and CEO of MTPCS LLC. We do business under the Cellular One brand. Our business, we started in 2005 in Montana and expanded from there into Oklahoma, East Texas, Central Louisiana, and the Gulf of Mexico. Our business came together through a series of acquisitions. We're a GSM-based carrier migrating to UMTS and then to LTE.
Good morning. My name is Mike Hagg with HTC, Ori Telephone Cooperative. We're located in northeastern South Carolina. We've been a telephone cooperative that was formed in 1952. So we've been around for 60 years, but we're in voice, video, data. We do it at wireless, across fiber, coax, copper. I joke and say the only thing we're not into the plumbing business other than that. Pretty much do everything else. We have approximately 80,000 customers, and I appreciate very much the previous speakers, Malcatel's comments regarding local, because that's how we build our business. That's what we are. We're a local company that was formed there to serve the local community. And it's always a challenge using the local, but at the same time providing those world-class services. And how do you compete with the large companies? So challenges.
Great. Well, thank you, each of you, for being here. I want to kick off our discussion with what we heard yesterday. I think that was a pretty big keynote from the SoftBank CEO. And I just, one of the things that really struck me from his presentation was this statistic of, 84% of the profits are taken by Verizon and AT&T, which is leaving 16% for the rest of you guys, like, 100 carriers at least. So how do you make money? I mean, how do you stay alive? And, just in general here, what were some of the reactions to his call to fight, fight, fight? I don't know, who wants to jump in first?
We'll keep it going.
Yeah.
I tell you, I hope you all are as excited as I am. I came in to yesterday very skeptical. I've had a relationship with Sprint for several years now. It has been challenging, and that's probably an understatement. But I spent time with Masa, and he made me a believer. Steve Barry can testify to this. We've been working, years now, even in previous associations that we were involved in together, trying to find a way to compete and to partner together with others that had similar vision to try to drive competition. And we always kind of fall short. It's just so hard to coalesce the industry. But what's happened here is the industry has gotten so concentrated, so incredibly concentrated into two dominant competitors, that if we don't move forward and partner and share our resources, we're going to continue to lose that 16% down to 10%, down to 5%. And so I'm just absolutely turned on by Moss's proposal. I am absolutely behind it. I will tell you, and I told some of the Sprint guys at dinner that evening that, executing it is going to be incredibly difficult, because there are so many components, there are so many aspects to it that to pull it off is just going to be a tremendously difficult task.
Before we move on, let me just ask you this. You said it's been difficult to partner.
Yeah.
What is it that makes it so difficult? And why do you think this might be different?
Yeah, because, we need access to nationwide networks. We need access to the bigger carriers. Typically, and rightfully, the big guys look out for themselves. There is no, historically, no interest in our safety, security, and well-being. It's all very self-serving, and that's the competition. That's okay. But what's happened now is the vast movement of concentration of power, and that's the differentiator. I've been in this business for 30 years. I got in 1984, and over that time, there was a variety of competition, but it was never concentrated. I mean, I was in AT&T when it was the monopoly, and it was it was destructed, so to speak. But it's moving back again. That's the difference. And so we have to work together to try to create that third national carrier jointly to be able to compete against.
Linda, what do you think? Is it doable?
I think it is doable, and I thought it was very exciting. I agree with Terry, and refreshing yesterday to hear Masa-san talk about this partnership. And I think the difference is the recognition of Sprint and T-Mobile as well, that a collaboration and partnership is necessary not only to the smaller carrier survival, but to their survival as well. And that they now recognize that AT&T and Verizon are credible threats to their own existence, and the only way to maintain competition in the industry and ensure that growth and survival is to partner. And perhaps it's a bit of a benevolent dictator approach, but I think to the benefit of everyone in this room. So I think the difference of why it might work this time where it's been so difficult before is it is in their best interest as well as ours.
Okay. Yeah, do you have the same feeling on that one?
Definitely. I think if I were a cartoonist, what I could imagine is a picture of Masa in Japan looking at the U.S. wireless industry and saying, this is going to be the easiest $20 billion I ever made. Right? What's wrong with these people? You have carriers who are focused in urban areas who are struggling against the duopoly, but paying them billions of dollars in roaming fees. You've got rural and regional smaller carriers who are in those areas, who are looking for partnerships, who want to be part of a nationwide footprint, and they're not working it out. Terry's experience is an example, and I think there are lots of reasons why it hasn't happened up to now.
Has it been a technical reason, or is it's a business reason?
I think it's a business reason.
Okay.
And I think it's a range of different factors. I think AT&T's attempt to buy T-Mobile had an impact in terms of what that meant for some of the carriers, and the inertia or initiative to accomplish something larger. I think each company has its own sorts of issues and access to capital, frankly. I think what Masa shared and what he envisions is really exciting for the industry, and just as importantly, or maybe even more so than the vision, is the means to do it.
Right. Michael, what do you think? I mean, one of the things that's striking me from this conversation too is it seems like maybe the big guys didn't realize how important getting to rural customers is.
Well, I don't know that they still recognize how
Really?
important it is. It's about where the money is, and good or bad, big chunks of money are made in large metropolitan areas. Now, a lot of us have made our business in the less dense areas. But there's two key components to this. One would be the fact that all of these industries, we've partnered through the years. So through all these years, we've partnered just on smaller scales. And we've had to survive. And that's not going to change. We're going to have to continue to partner to survive, just like we have for the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years in our case, with different other industries, other businesses to survive. The second component is, even after you partner, I don't mind competition, but I'm just looking for somewhat of a level playing field. And even when you partner, it does not ensure that there's going to be a level playing field. And that's some of the other battles that we have to fight. And unfortunately, you have to come together as a group, not just for the buying power, not just for the roaming, for those things, but to be able to fight those battles to say we need a level playing field.
So it sounds like, in a sense, you're still maybe a little bit skeptical of Sprint being a big carrier. I mean, do you think that they're sort of true in their intentions, that they want to help you as much as they want you to help them?
As you've heard here, I sat in some of the same meetings, and coming in, always when you're dealing with the big guy, you're always skeptical. But I can tell you the things that I heard, I was thoroughly impressed, and I don't doubt 1 minute that the words we heard from Masa were sincere, were genuine, and I'll use a little reference back. In our community, had a high unemployment, and for years we tried to partner and do some things with local businesses to generate new jobs. And you would get to a point, but then it would always break down. Well, I'm the optimist, so I found the good in things. Well, the good is that the economy got so bad recently that locally people put their egos in their back pockets to say, what do we all need to do? And I think even in today's environment, that's what we're doing. We're having to say, okay, it's different times, different challenges. Put our egos aside. What's it take to survive? So, I support it, and I believe what I've heard, which is, Sprint is genuine in this, and I think it's exciting.
What Masa is proposing is the obvious. You take a look at the maps, and you overlay the maps, it's the obvious. It's been really frustrating to a lot of us to not have people that were in position to kind of push this forward. And that concept has been presented before. It's just now you got somebody who's in charge and can push it forward. Not to see it. And because, you know, you put a Verizon map against a, you know, rural carrier map, it lacks. You put a Verizon map against a Sprint map, it lacks. You put a Verizon map against a CCA overlaid with Sprint, it is competitive. It's obvious.
Yeah.
And,
one of the things that I didn't realize, and in doing my reporting for the stories I was writing here, I didn't realize that Sprint actually does have some spectrum in a lot of these rural areas. They just never build out the network because it's expensive. But one of the things I found shocking as a consumer and as somebody who gives advice to consumers is I think you have to be nationwide, don't you? I mean, to really compete, you need to, people who live in the cities don't just stay in the cities. I mean, they have vacation homes, they go on vacation, they visit grandma, they go places where they need coverage. And I've always sort of felt that that's where Sprint and T-Mobile have lacked. So as a consumer, I think it's pretty exciting. I'm just, like you all, I'm wondering, you know, where does the partnership thing really, where does the rubber hit the road, and can, you know, you really make it work with all these cooks in the kitchen?
yeah, well, that's going to be the tough, executing this is going to be the tough part.
Yeah.
I think there's an important distinction, too, between types of partnerships that come from perspective. And I think what you hear from some of us here and probably others you talk to is being impressed with Mas's sincerity and his passion about creating something. There can be, and there have been in this industry at times, the kind of partnership that's a little bit of the waltz of the spiders, you know, very carefully around each other. If there's a real commitment to partnership and there's a recognition of the value that can be created for both sides, not trying to set up for maybe a future acquisition, or not trying to worry about giving away too much. I don't want this to be too good a deal for the other side, but working together toward a common goal of crafting a competitive alternative to the two major carriers, then I think it really can work and really can be different.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that it's easy right now to find all the things that might be too difficult, it might not work. But I think we should give credit to, this is the first national operator that has really reached out to this organization to say, we want to be your partner. We've, as an organization and as members, have been trying to get these partnerships with the national guys for years. But this is, at least as far as I know, the first time a national operator has taken the initiative, has the drive, has the vision, has the leadership, has the money to make it work. And, you know, it's kind of counterproductive to figure out how it might not work at this point. I think this is the time to get behind it. And with this group of people as partners, I think that's where the focus can be, because if the goal is to compete against Verizon and AT&T, it'd be completely insane to tear apart the partnership.
Yeah, it's all about intention, too. Just in the general press, gigantic deals get worked out in no time. You hear about these mergers that happen over a weekend between big companies. When the parties are motivated and they both see the benefit, it can happen. When the parties aren't really motivated and they don't really want to do it, you can have, and I'm sure many of us have been through it, the kind of discussions about what seems like a logical arrangement dragging on for literally years.
So do you all expect T-Mobile to follow suit? And I mean, they've put out a statement that they think this is a good idea, but you know, we haven't seen the kind of commitment that Sprint has shown. Do you think, are you hoping that they'll come on board as well?
Definitely hoping, because
Yeah.
some of us, it's an easier path to the Sprint relationship if you're an underlying CDMA carrier. Some of us are GSM carriers. I think we hope very much that T-Mobile thinks this is a good idea and wants to do something similar.
Okay. And Michael, how important do you think the device ecosystem piece of this announcement was?
It's very important, very
Okay.
important. You know, we get hung up on technology a lot, talking about, you know, technology, you know, our acronyms. At the end of the day, the consumer wants a service, and they want it something that they can use and they can make it theirs. You know, this is scary. I'm probably gonna get in trouble now that this is being, broadcast out there, that someone's going to capture this and send it to my wife. But my wife is technologically challenged. And so I get excited about, look what this will do, look what this will do. And she looks at me and says, you're an idiot. Well, then all of a sudden she starts using these devices. And I said, you thought this was stupid? And she goes, well, I thought all the stuff you were talking about was stupid. But when she can apply it to her own world, well, the devices are an extension of us at applying it to our world. And when you don't have that, the consumer doesn't want it. So that is very crucial, because we can have the best networks, we can provide the best service, but if you don't have all the components, including the devices, it lacks. And when it lacks, the consumer feels slighted. So you have to have it.
Just a tangible example. I'm a small guy, very small. We cover our coverage is about 500,000 pops, central western Tennessee, western Kentucky. Like I said, we started commercial operations in 2012, so we've been live 2 years. It took me 2 years to get the iPhone. So the iPhone, I was non-competitive against Verizon and AT&T without the iPhone. It took me 2 years, we've got it. I still do not have access to the new release Samsung. We're on the 2 generations back. Masa said something that just resonated. His volume between SoftBank, Sprint, and some of his other many holdings, I guess there are many, quite a guy, is 2 times the buying power of Verizon. And he says, I don't want to make money off of you guys. I'm not, your partners. I will not mark up a device to make $1 off of you. I will give those devices to you at my cost. I can't imagine what that cost is. I'm drooling.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's another implication to the device challenge for the small carriers that I think often gets overlooked. And for the smaller carriers like us who cannot participate in the Apple program at this point, we simply don't have the wherewithal to meet the minimums and that sort of thing. And in the other iconic devices as well, you sort of delegate yourself to a less credit-worthy customer base. And so when you come back to why is the percentage of revenue and EBITDA concentrated as it is, one other factor of that is often the smaller carrier is only dealing with those who cannot get credit through one of the national operators. And therein, increased bad debt and increased write-offs. I mean, there's just a number of implications. You have to compete on price. So there's a number of implications. So the ability to get those devices at competitive prices completely is a game changer.
I agree. And just to jump on that, because I've got very strong feelings about devices. A lot of the focus has been on band class inclusion, and that's very important. But there's also a very significant competitive issue when it comes to devices. How they're constructed and customized for the 2 largest carriers prevents them from being available to the rest of us.
That was something I was curious about. I know that there has been an agreement about band class 12 for LTE, and AT&T I think has a couple of years to start rolling those out. But even when those devices come out, they're not necessarily compatible with all of your networks. Is that? That's correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Exactly. It's an important piece, but there's a lot more work to be done there for all of us. So devices are customized, even down to the firmware for AT&T and Verizon. It would make sense to me that there would be a generic build and each carrier can put its customization software on top of that. That's got to be more cost efficient for even the large carriers. So it has to make you wonder why it's not that way.
Because they don't want it to be that way.
Thank you. Exactly.
Well, so do you feel that this relationship with Sprint, hopefully you guys will have something that's built for you, essentially?
Very much, or at least built generically that we can work with. So all of us collectively, without Sprint or T-Mobile, we can't go to Samsung or Apple or really any device manufacturer and say, we want you to approach it differently and stop building them that way and build them in a generic version, logical layers to what goes into it. we can't do that. We need the scale, and SoftBank provides, I think, the first real opportunity for us to make some progress on that.
Yeah. Now, all of you weren't there when all the press people who were here, followed Masa out of the room, and we, cornered him and peppered him with questions. And one of the things that came up is, he's not been shy about talking about a merger with T-Mobile. And, I will admit, if you read any of my stuff, I've been very skeptical. I don't think that regulators will approve this. They've been pretty clear, I think, on the record that 4 national carriers is what they think is important for competition. But I have to say, he made a compelling argument. And he, though he wouldn't name names, said, I think he still is trying to educate regulators and educate the market that he thinks that this is a good merger. And from your perspective as smaller carriers, how does that affect you? I mean, is that a good thing if that national carrier who you're partnering with is even stronger in those cities and urban areas, or does it somehow hurt you in any way? Who wants to jump in first? Okay.
When you look at it, I'm not hung up as much on Sprint, T-Mobile as partnering as I am the fact that the duopoly continues to get larger. So if you want to sit there and say that it's better to have 4 or it's better to have 15, the fact that we continually approach this, there's 2 and everyone else is getting eliminated, is the bigger issue. So if by Sprint and T-Mobile they can work something out and it makes them stronger to be able to provide services for us, great. If by keeping separate it helps provide things for us, great. The big key though is when you look at, we look at that trajectory that has occurred with the duopoly. It doesn't matter if there's 2, if there's 4 or 14, you're heading down the path of something bad when there's only 2. And that's across all of our telecommunication industries. The more that you have the power concentrated with 1 or 2, the rest of us are sitting out there not only not providing services, but there's a large chunk of the United States right now that is suffering because of that.
I would just argue with the concept that there's 4 national carriers. I think there's been 2 behemoths that have developed, and then there's the rest of us. Hence, that's why Sprint and T-Mobile are part of this organization. This organization represents everybody that's not dominating the industry. And so I would make that argument that if our regulators and lawmakers still believe in the concept that there's 4 national carriers, there's not. So if we have to accept further consolidation amongst ourselves to create a real third footprint that's competitive and where we can actually compete against Verizon and AT&T, then that is a good thing.
Yeah, they should take you to Washington.
No thanks.
No? Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah. Well, I'd say I don't think there's anything magical about the number 4, right? Anybody should have a chance to make a logical argument about what this means for consumers. And, with the sorts of things that we're talking about that Terry and Mike mentioned, my real answer is it depends. If you have the kind of structures and relationships in place that ensure the end result is going to be better for consumers and more competitive than it is today, aside from some arbitrary headline number, then it's probably a good thing. If you don't have that, if it's in any way going to reduce competition, then it's bad. I know I'm stating the obvious, but I think that's probably what you heard after his speech, is that that's a big part of what this is about. And if collectively a large number of us can come to agreement on the kind of relationships that bring more competition, that let us be more competitive, that let there be more competition to AT&T and Verizon, that sounds like a pretty good thing.
Yeah. One of the things that came up on a panel I moderated yesterday on Spectrum, when this issue, we were talking about this issue, and they said, well, when the market gets so concentrated, it just means you need more regulation. What do you guys think of that? I mean, should the FCC be stepping in, and I mean, I don't know if they can just sort of pick off AT&T and Verizon, and I don't think they would stand for them to just be regulated and everybody else not is regulated. But I mean, is that where we're going? Is that the answer?
I have to laugh a little bit because it's in my DNA to fight against regulation.
Right.
And you made the comment about going to Washington. I've been going to Washington for 20 plus years, and I've been espousing less regulation. However, you know, that was in a much more competitive marketplace. So I think, and I've been friends with Tom Wheeler for a long time, and I know, based on my years at CTIA with him, that Tom believes in competition. He is an absolute advocate for competition. So I think regulation falls in line when competition is stifled, and I think that's where he'll draw the line. I'm pretty confident, and that's where I think we generally, who generally oppose regulation, will probably have to realize that it's inevitable if, in fact, competition is being stifled.
But do you think, I mean, we're all sitting here saying it's stifled. I mean, we've got 84% of the profits going to 2 companies. Isn't it stifled?
Yeah, there are ways to not address it through regulation prior to having to, because once you go down the regulatory road, I mean, it is a, you know, it's a nightmare. Because regulation begs regulation, which begs regulation. So that's why I think the competitive approach that MASA is proposing is better than a harsh regulatory environment. However, there may be necessary things within the regulatory efforts that allow this approach to go forward. Mm-hmm.
So. What do the rest of you think about regulation?
It was sort of, you asked a trick question, Meg, because I mean, it's sort of like saying, do I look fat in this suit? You want, you know, when you sit there and talk about regulation, there's a need for the right regulation. One of the things we struggle with is that, you know, our technology changes so fast, the regulatory environment can't keep up with it. Mm-hmm. So to answer it, yes, you know, I think there is a need for some regulation, but then I sort of have to hesitate and say, but I want it to be the right regulation, I want it to be current, I want it to be effective, and we don't always get that.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of cases, we're dealing with regulations today that were put in place 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, and they don't apply today, and we're sitting here having to fight those. So is there a need for some regulation? Yes, but also I'd like to say it's good regulation and something that can be current.
Linda,
yeah, I just wanted to add to that I also think that there's an environment right now that Chairman Wheeler brings that is an atmosphere of positive competition and free market, letting the free market drivers kind of fix the problem. And as I would agree with Terry, the proposal from MASA is the right step. But I just think putting out there an environment of free market competitive policy already sets a tone for changes instead of you don't necessarily need to come in with heavy regulation. It's knowing that you've got a policy and a regulatory environment that is supportive of the free market and competition that already changes the game. And hopefully through some of these efforts with Sprint and in this type of collaboration, we can avoid heavy-handed regulation. But I think light-handed regulation just to steer policy in the right direction for pro-competition is kind of where we're hoping for.
Okay.
That's the part that makes sense to me. Regulation that ensures fair competition is what we need.
Mm-hmm. And this sort of leads into the next part of our discussion here about the upcoming spectrum auctions. And I think a lot of people are waiting, you know, to see how the FCC is going to draft the rules and how they're going to promote competition. Let me just sort of ask a broad question here. I mean, how critical are these auctions to you guys? Or you know, do you think that AWS as well as the incentive auction are going to be important for smaller carriers? I know obviously that some of the bigger ones seem very interested, but are these both equally important auctions for you?
You know, spectrum is such a scarce resource. Every auction of spectrum is critical, but I have to tell you that when you have your own scarce resources, lack of capital, I'm still living on capital calls, and I'm still negative EBITDA. You know, one auction clearly becomes much more critical than the other. AWS means nothing to me. It means something to me from the perspective that if it's constructed correctly in a pro-competitive way, then that means something to me. In other words, if they auction off CMA-sized chunks of spectrum, if the aggregation rules are developed to preclude the big guys from continuing to storehouse and on and on and on, those are good things. So as it sets the stage for the 600, which is beachfront property, that's prime real estate. Everybody's going to want it because of the economics of the capital deployment at that spectrum, because of the, I mean, it's, you know, kind of harkens me back to my early 800 days. And wow, what a difference. I deploy at 1.9 today, and I just wish it was 800. The capital differences, propagation difference. We all know those engineers. We're in the industry. We all know that. So I don't want to belittle the AWS auction, because I think it really depends on what you need for your own ecosystem, how much capital do you have, and probably the competitive nature of that actual auction. I think, you know, there's going to be a lot of competition for the 600.
Mm-hmm. What do you all, anybody else?
I pretty much agree. So it's not that the AWS is unimportant. I think among our membership, for some it's very important, for others it's less important. But in addition, it's important precedent. Also, the 600 megahertz auction is very important. That's going to have the potential to have a major impact, even reshape the industry based on who gets how much of that spectrum.
Now, is it not just the, you know, the propagation characteristics of AWS versus 600, or is it the fact that these auctions are happening so closely together? That was another thing that came up in the panel yesterday is, you know, and I'm not really a math genius here, but when they were figuring out, you know, what they're expecting, you know, the cost, you know, per pop to be in this auction, they, you know, it sounded like it was very expensive, and something like, you know, even if AT&T and Verizon get a good chunk of it, you know, the rest of the industry is going to have to pony up something like $13 billion to even, you know, cover the cost of the spectrum. I mean, is that something you all worry about, that it's too expensive? And
definitely,
what do you do about that? I guess you just pick and choose where you bid. Is that?
I think that's it. It has the potential to be very expensive, and for a lot of our membership, that could be a challenge.
And it is. It's big dollars, and these are huge business decisions for us. You know, when you look at the duopoly, you know, we're a rounding error for them. Mm-hmm. So one of the difficult parts of this is we're sitting here trying to make business decisions, and we don't even know the rules of the game yet. So I can't go to my board of directors, I can't go back and I can't say, here's what I want to do, because when I do, then they look and say, okay, financially, and I say, well, I can't tell you yet, because we're still fighting to get the license sizes that are more meaningful to us. We're still trying to get these other things that are more meaningful to us. Well, when's that going to happen? And I said, I can't tell you. And they said, we'll come back and ask for the money when you can tell us. So here we are, the time frame keeps getting shorter and shorter, and we can't make a business decision because we don't have the facts to be able to make those decisions. It's difficult.
Yeah. Do you, what kind of sense are you getting in the capital markets, though? I mean, is that, would you go there for financing, and do you think that they're amenable to, you know, do you think they see the potential?
There isn't a bank in the world that will finance a startup cellular carrier in 2014 with negative EBITDA. I have no access to capital. I am partnering with ILECs who want to be in the wireless business, and the capital that I get is in the form of capital calls from individual ILECs to keep me going, to get me to, you know, over time, get me to profitability, so they have a profitable wireless asset that they're convinced that they're never going to sell. They sold one, made 1,000% return, ROI, but they said, I need to get back in. We need to have a wireless asset in our portfolio. And so the access to capital for somebody who's not cash flow positive is almost zero. Now, a lot of folks that are mature, that have mature operations, that have you know, positive EBITDA and, you know, money in the bank, it's a different story.
Mm-hmm. But even that only gets you so far, because you can have a nice business and be producing a lot of positive EBITDA, but you've got other uses for that for that debt capacity or capital you have, including funding your LTE build out.
Right.
So it's not the case for many of us that we've got huge pools of capital waiting for this opportunity. And like Terry pointed out, they're all different forms of ownership. We're a private equity-backed business. They appreciate the value of spectrum, but like Mike said, what would I tell them today?
Right.
Well, we might have to buy Dallas to cover our Texas markets, or don't know what the rules are going to be, don't know what the prices are going to be. I think that's an area where, from a regulatory perspective, some clarity would really help us, because it takes time to make plans. Mm-hmm. Very big companies have the access to capital on short notice. Some of us have access to capital, but it takes time and planning to go through the steps necessary to get
Well,
it.
it seems like we're going to have some rules out or some clarity here in a few days on AWS. But that doesn't sound like it's as pressing to you.
Well, that'll set the stage.
That'll set the stage.
I hope,
Okay.
I think. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, if it comes out, everything's going to be large geographic chunks of spectrum, and, they're not going to worry about spectrum aggregation, and, all the rules are kind of lining up against us, then, boy, I'm scared. I'm not sure we're going to have any participation at 600.
Yeah.
If the rules come out and they're CMA size, and, there are rules to help get small guys in, and there are rules to protect against massive aggregation of spectrum, and, all those things line up, then I think we'll have a very exciting auction and very profitable one for the federal government whenever they do the 600 incentive auction.
Yeah.
I think, too, though, there's a little bit of a landmine out there, which is the anti-collusion rules. We're all talking so much about partnerships right now. Those conversations effectively would have to end if you're going to participate in the auction.
Oh, boy.
Because
Yeah.
the rules provide some latitude. You can't talk about certain subjects, but the way most companies, particularly large companies, implement how they stay in compliance with those rules is by not having any kind of partnership discussions during
Wow.
the time period, the quiet period of the auction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing I've heard some rumblings about is, depending on how AWS goes in September, there's some speculation that the FCC may push back the 600 megahertz auction. I think they have something until 2021 or 2022 to actually, according to the statute, to actually get this auction done. Is that something that you guys are I mean, that sounds like it could really hurt you.
I might be profitable by then, so that,
Okay.
that might be good for me.
Okay. All right. Any concerns about, the timing of this? And I mean, you need the spectrum tomorrow, or just
I think
whenever
soon.
you get
I mean,
it, you're happy?
Yeah.
I guess I'd say for the whole industry, there's clearly a need for more spectrum. We're clearly inhibited in what we can do. So the notion of pushing back something like that far, I think, would be pretty challenging.
There's a driver here that it's a business driver, and that's the incredible acceleration of growth of data. And so you can't feed the data monster without having spectrum to support it. And so, for those of us that have, limited amount of spectrum, I operate in some cases on 10 megahertz of 1.9. I've got 20 in other places. But I've got to deal with, deploying LTE and supporting the data monster at 10 megahertz in some cases. And, that's a tough proposition. And so if, we push that out, you take a look at the trend lines. I mean, my current EVDO data growth rate from a roaming perspective is over 40% per year. And then we've talked to roaming partners about, okay, then what's going to happen with LTE, and that line just goes straight up. So, we need spectrum as an industry to support that growth of data and the development of all those, those wonderful applications that all the great speakers that come to it from a technological standpoint, that we need to be able to support apps for our customers. So.
Mm-hmm. So now, where is everybody here in terms of LTE? I mean, that's, that was one of the interesting things from the previous speaker, talking about, if you are a small competitor in a market, you don't want to, follow closely behind the big guys. You want to lead. But, just it seems like a confluence of things the rural market hasn't been able to lead in LTE. You know,
well, I can give you a good
yeah.
example. In our case, as a GSM carrier, we operate on 850 megahertz spectrum. So we would need devices, number one devices, that can operate at LTE at 850 and step down to GSM. There's not a lot of them around. So for any of us, part of the impediment has been access to devices. Another issue is roaming for a lot of rural and regional carriers. That's an important part of our revenue and our EBITDA. So there isn't as much of an investment case to go charge off and build new technology for technology's sake for just the retail case. Without LTE roaming agreements, without the ability to let that service expand outside of what's sometimes a small geographic area, it's even harder to justify. It's harder to get the value out of the retail part of the business. So we look at it, and we're very much a follower. We think we can afford to deploy it. We think we can make it work initially on the spectrum that we've got, but there's nothing to do until we have a nationwide roaming partner and we have access to devices.
Right, which is good with some of these discussions that are happening, but it sounds like it's still going to be quite a while. You know, when I asked Sprint about the devices and interoperability, it's not going to be until early next year. Are you all already seeing customers leaving because you lack LTE? I mean, is that a problem that you're facing?
For us, it's not yet. We've had a little over 200 sites in our total network. We've deployed just like in the last few days, our first 30 LTE sites. It hadn't been a real competitive issue yet, but it certainly will be. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the concept of being at least able to say that we offer it is certainly something that you can tout, and it puts you on kind of from a branding standpoint, it puts you on the same level.
Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate that we were awarded a broadband stimulus grant award package. It's taken a couple of years to get the money out of the federal government, but nonetheless, the business case works because it's not our money, right? It's taxpayer money, and but even still, our private equity investors have not been terribly enthused about going ahead and building the LTE network without the roaming agreements, without the devices. We operate on 1900. And so we've really been in a slow build mode because the business case as a standalone LTE island is not really very compelling even when you're using somebody else's money. And so our initial deployment is more or less a fixed wireless deployment to use the capital and get the network built. But there's so much more that could be done, and with a nationwide roaming arrangement and access to devices, again, that changes. Now, we're fortunate, we compete against all 4 of our national competitors in our market. None of them have built LTE in our market, so there is no LTE.
Apparently
So,
they think people don't need it out where
well,
you live.
rural America is, still underserved.
They're built in our market, so.
Okay.
Well, and I think it's what we talked about earlier. It's the experience. So we can sit there and talk about 2G, 3G, LTE, whatever acronym, but it's really the person and their experience that they're utilizing. So there are people with LTE phones today that are saying, hey, I'm LTE. Look at this. Well, they're in a non-LTE market, talking about how great their LTE phone is. Well, they don't know that they don't have LTE there.
Do you burst their bubble and let them know?
It's just you talk about the experience, and you got to make sure that experience is right. But back to that, if we're a mobile business, we're a mobile society. So even if you have, as we've all talked about here, LTE in this section, it doesn't mean anything to the consumer if they go out and they can't use that true experience beyond that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a little bit of a relative standard. So unlike your envious situation, we compete with AT&T and Verizon in all of our areas, and both have fairly extensive LTE in the area. And so from what Mike's saying in terms of what's the customer experience, we feel like with UMTS, we're right there with them. Our customers aren't lacking anything, But we're very sensitive to the fact that, over time, more applications will develop, usage will increase, more customers will get the branding message that's pounded into their heads all the time, right? Nobody promotes 4G anymore, they promote 4G LTE. Right. It's just going to be a growing issue.
So one more point. I knew the answer to this, but because we're now live, I called Verizon and I said I would like an LTE roaming agreement. They said, we don't do LTE roaming. We won't agree to work with you. So that makes the relationship that we're talking about here with Sprint and the rest of the 100+ smaller carriers that are members of this association so much more important. That's going to be looks like that's going to be my only LTE roaming partner, roaming option.
Is it going to come too late though?
It may not come at all if we don't get behind it.
Right,
so,
right.
Lays better than never. Well, it's up to us to help drive this and make it come earlier, make it come as quickly as we can get there.
Right, right. And this is sort of related and maybe not really relevant if you're not LTE yet, but voice over LTE, and we've heard some talk of that here. How important is that going to be? It seems like it's going to help level the playing field in terms of your potential roaming partners. You may not just have to go with Sprint or just have to go with T-Mobile. It seems like it'll level everything out. Is that something you're keeping your eye on yet, or is that a little too far into the future?
Yes and yes. Keeping our eye on it, but it does seem pretty far into the future, and a lot of questions still with it, with what it means, that the trade-offs. There's some benefits like you're pointing out, the requirements, what it means for coverage footprints. In rural areas, especially the older networks, we all tried to maximize coverage, and so applications that are so data intensive might not work at the cell edge. What does that mean in terms of cell site count? Those sorts of things. And I think at least at this point, from what I'm seeing, the customer impact of VoLTE or not VoLTE doesn't seem to be meaningful, or maybe even identifiable. That may change in the future, but at least initially, I think it's something we're watching, but we're not counting on.
Is it going to be potentially more efficient? Will it reduce some of your cost, or you don't know yet?
I've heard mixed things. I don't know. I think it could be more spectrally efficient, but I think even that there's some questions about.
I'm told yes. There's a compelling business case. We don't know the capital needed to include that in a network. We have no choice but to be a fairly passive follower, and we'll be a year or 2 years behind its deployment probably from Verizon, I assume. But we'll get there. We'll have to. We'll have to.
Well, theoretically, it should reduce capital costs. So, currently, as we're building and we're upgrading our UMTS network as well as building LTE. So, in essence, we're running 2 parallel, entirely separate networks to support voice and support data, right? So, as that comes together, logic would say that it should, in fact, improve the efficiency of the network. Having said that, as the bandwidth demands increase, that has its own capital costs. So, I don't think we have a handle on what the trade-offs are going to be yet.
As a company that's, once again, we were originally a telephone company. We got in the cable business, ISP, all these things. There's a lot of parallels here because, I can go back years to where people were saying, well, the telephone, that you're going to keep this telephone no matter what, this traditional telephone line no matter what. Well, I can get online, I can get on a data connection to do this. But it's not reliable. I don't have the data speeds to do that. Well, where has that transitioned? So I think our conversation here is there's a lot of parallels in that. It's a matter of what that time frame is that it will become, come of age.
And this kind of brings up another topic of discussion is, the IP transition. Now, how does that sort of affect, you smaller carriers? Is that something, again, that you're keeping your eye on? Are you, is it going to be troublesome? Is it a good thing for you?
It's a good thing. We're all IP backhaul. We incorporate as much IP as we're able to into our core, into our network. It's a good thing. Again, we kind of follow right behind the lead of the industry, and we've got to do things kind of on the cheap. And that leads kind of to that because, quite frankly, there's a lot of efficiencies you can gain through. I marvel at the industry. I think back to getting into the industry in '84 and how little the industry really changed from '84 to, say, '96. And then, we worried about stuff like, shrinking the phone and being able to roam. We didn't worry about in-building penetration, digital to 2G, but then all of a sudden from '96 through now, 2014, there's been this explosion of technology, and the industry has changed by a factor of 10 in those years after the Telecom Act was written versus the early years when we were still just worried about putting up cell sites and and trying to fill in coverage and that kind of stuff. So, I think that all is moving to an exciting level that you really, honestly, the technologists that spend all day thinking about that, they probably have a much clearer vision than us who kind of sit down and we worry about how am I going to acquire the next customer? Is it going to be a customer that's low subprime that's going to churn off, and how can I raise the next buck to be able to deploy the next thing? And but for us, I think it's helped a lot from an efficiency standpoint.
So I agree with Terry, but here comes my CCA plug.
Okay.
I think there's significant regulatory risk. So in an IP transition, will carriers still have the same requirements for interconnection? We hope so, but we need rules that say that.
Yeah, good point.
What if AT&T and Verizon say, well, no, sorry, now we're not obligated to let you connect to our network. You can't make calls to the areas we serve from your mobile service. So I think we just have to be diligent about how the rules are created.
Which this might be sort of you might think this is an elementary question, but kind of going back to this idea of data roaming, and you mentioned Verizon not roaming, letting you roam on their LTE network. I thought there was a data roaming order from the FCC. Don't they have to let you roam, or they can pick and choose which network they let you roam onto?
I can just tell you what they told me.
Okay.
It's a loose order.
Oh boy.
Not full of too many fine points. So I think the FCC did try a light-handed, and it certainly was a step definitely in the right direction. Appreciate that because it certainly moved us a lot more forward. But it doesn't have a lot of meat, and there's a lot of sort of outs. So I don't know how practically it's working in a lot of cases.
I think it takes us back to your earlier question about regulation versus competition. There's a limit to what regulation can accomplish. So, we're all delighted with the order, but what's it mean and how do you implement it and what's a reasonable rate? Those are not questions that really, it would take a whole nother level of regulatory involvement to try to define, and I'd be surprised if any of us thought it was a good idea for them to try to define it. We'd be much happier, be much better in competitive environment where the areas that we serve, there are other carriers competing to work with us because they want their customers served there.
Okay, and I'm going to wrap things up here. One of the things that Masa was talking about yesterday was just how everything the market has gotten more concentrated in the last 5 years. So I'm going to ask each of you to kind of look out 5 years from now. Do you think we're going to be in a better place in terms of, the fight against the two big guys, or do you think that some of us won't be around? I mean, I hope I'm around, but I'm not actually a carrier. Do you think some of your membership maybe won't? What do you think is going to happen? Positive or negative here?
Well, I'm a lot older than you, so I truly hope I'm around. I'm encouraged by his outreach. One of my investors recently, one of our last board meeting, we had a pretty successful operation previously that we sold, and they made a lot of money and mentioned all that. Well, it looked pretty easy to him. And he said, wow, this is going to be a piece of cake. You've got 16 years. I brought back my team's experience. I said, no, this is infinitely harder than when we started in 1990. Can we survive another 5 years? It's touch and go. Every day is touch and go. The avenue that's been opened up for us this week here is an incredible opportunity that I think could be the opportunity that ensures our longevity. That's that important and that critical. We can't blow this.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Well, I agree entirely. I do think there will be some fallout. I don't think every carrier that's here today is going to make it. There will be continued consolidation. I think that's normal market changes. But I do think, again, that the announcement made this week, if implemented and really followed through, I think there's a tremendous responsibility that goes with that suggestion of partnership and making sure that that really comes together. I guess in my ideal optimistic world, I would say that the partnership works, comes together, and that actually makes AT&T and Verizon also have to be more better competitors and not so monopolistic, because if there's a true third, fourth competitor, then they'll need to play as well, and that would be better for consumers if everybody competed fairly. And I'd like to say that I think that the market has a real opportunity to get there, but there's a lot of places in the next 5 years it could stumble and fall, and so I think there's a lot of work to be done.
I'm 70-30. I think 30% chance we're not as well off 5 years from now than we are today, but I'm more optimistic than not. I think it's been a tough couple years in terms of the strength of the duopoly building. I think at the commission, the regulatory environment and the support for wireless hit a low point, but I think there are a number of things that have changed that should make us optimistic. I think Tom Wheeler's leadership at the commission, I think what we've talked about here at this meeting is, there are two important ingredients. There's a logic to it, but now there's also a catalyst. And I think that will really help improve things. So on an individual company level, like Linda's saying, anything can happen, right? Not all of us will make it. Hopefully some of us will be giant successes. And there'll be bumps along the way, but much more so than not, I think we're turning the corner.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Mike?
I look back and through the years, there's been numerous times where we said, this is going to kill us. This is going to kill us. We're not going to survive this. If I had $1 for every time that I said that, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be out on the beach doing something different.
You could buy a whole lot of Spectrum.
That would be buying some Spectrum. But we've always figured a way to overcome that. Now, each time that those things occurred, there were companies that didn't survive. We happen to be one that did. There were companies that didn't survive, and I think the key here is going to be, what are the actions going to be taken? Are they going to be taken timely enough? Are they going to be the right actions taken so that a large quantity of us make it, as opposed to a large quantity of us not making it through this transition?
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for joining us. I think this was a really good discussion, and I was very happy to hear all your thoughts. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you. If you can stay, or we were going to wrap up before we go, or if I had some evaluation forms, I'd bring them to you so you'd be able to fill them out. Which we're coming to the close of the event here, and like I said, the evaluation forms, please fill them out. We'd love to hear what you think about everything. So I got a real deal for you. Let me talk just a moment about CCA's annual convention 2014 in Las Vegas. Going to be at the Cosmopolitan. Buy one ticket, get 2 shows. Buy one, get 1 show for free. If you buy a CCA registration, you get access to all the CTI activities at NOCA, all their non-paid activities for free. Then we're going to have transportation going to both shows. We get to kick off the Super Mobility Week on September 7th through 10th, and I think we're already getting a phenomenal amount of interest. You saw the kickoff this couple days ago. Tom Wheeler says he's going to be there, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that if I have to personally drive him out there. I think I'm going to get him. But Tom is really excited about coming. And this is a great opportunity, I think, for us. We're going to be able to kick it off. And I think we can, in some respects, my goal is to set some of the policy agenda and set the stage for some of the issues that are important to the wireless world in this Mobility Week. And so I think it'll be a great opportunity. So come register with us. You get lower prices on the rooms. We negotiated ours a couple of years before CTI did. So come join us out there. I think you'll note it. A really nice event. So please come and join us. The next spring event for CCA will be the 2015 Global Expo, and we're going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. Haven't quite finished the details on exactly where, but somewhere in the great town of Atlanta, the largest airplane hub in the world. One good reason is you might be able to get there. So thank you. Don't forget our Capitol Hill Day, June 18th this year. We had over 100 meetings last year with all members of the House and Senate, and what we try to do is put you in front of your member of Congress. Nothing excites a member of Congress more than a constituent, especially a constituent that might actually have employees and pay salaries in his or her district. So it's a great opportunity to not only learn a little about our issues, but also press the flesh, so to speak, with your member of Congress. Great opportunity to network. So please take a look at that. And now for the money we're giving away, we're giving the winners of the app contest. And let me, I've got some money right here. So if I just call your name, if you'll just come up and we'll give you some type of American Express money card. I don't know what it is. Third place winner. And this is third place winner for the app contest that we have. And Raleigh Abigog, R-O-L-L-Y-A-B-I-G-O-G. Raleigh. Congratulations, Raleigh. Appreciate it. And the second place winner, we'll get a picture of everybody right after we hand it. The second place winner goes to Greg Lasovo. Greg Lasovo. L-I-S-O-V-O-Y. Greg Lasovo is here. Okay. Since he's been active, we'll make sure he gets his dollars here. And the winner, which I got to say, she just blew everybody away. It's a phenomenal achievement. Andy Cook, winner. So give them all a hand, and thank you so very much. We're going to get a picture with everybody. Talk about fast, innovative users of the app. That's great. So really appreciate it. In closing, thank everyone for joining us. I also want to remind everyone that we have sessions out here this morning. Check your schedule to make sure that you get to some of the sessions. I think we're going to have an update also from FirstNet. So don't miss that one also. Our Pinnacle sponsors, again, that's one more time, Alcatel-Lucent. Thank you. Ericsson, Huawei, Interrupt Technologies, Cineverse, and TNS. Thank you so very much. Couldn't do it without you. We look forward to seeing you again in Vegas, September 7th. Thank you so very much.